Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name's Chris Huxley Reynard. I'm the Commercial Director at AST Reygar. And I'm going to be talking this afternoon to introduce the BareFLEET vessel remote monitoring system. Um, there's going to be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and there's a sort of Q&A tab where you can type in your questions as we go, and we'll come to those at the end of the webinar. So please submit any questions that you have as we go along. Okay, I'm going to share a presentation screen, so just bear with me half a moment. Okay, so to start, who is AST Reygar? Reygar Limited is a UK company that was founded in 2012 and is an award-winning provider of performance monitoring and control solutions for both crewed and uncrewed vessels. And the company developed the BareFLEET remote monitoring system for commercial vessels, which is now widely adopted within the commercial marine industry, with more than 300 vessels using the system. AST Networks acquired Reygar earlier this year to enhance its capabilities in delivering comprehensive solutions to the marine industry. And that's created AST Reygar, which is now a formidable force in the small commercial marine market. And the company AST Reygar and the product BareFLEET combines the best features of technology from IRAMS as well as Reygar's BareFLEET system, offering really an unrivaled analytics solution to the maritime sector. So since 2016, the Reygar and the BareFLEET system has supported more than 50 customers, operating over 300 small commercial vessels. We've monitored 50,000 vessel passages, over 100,000 transfers of personnel from vessels onto offshore structures, and over 500,000 engine running hours. And our customers cover a broad range within the commercial marine sector. We have CTV operators, tugboat customers, operators of workboats, of fast ferries, of crew boats, and pilot boats. And our customers include not just the vessel operators themselves, but sometimes their customers, the businesses that charter these vessels, such as, for example, offshore wind operator or offshore farm operator users as well. Our customers aren't just based in the UK, they're in Europe, they're in the USA, Singapore, Taiwan, even as far as Japan. So there's a global customer base. So I wanted to start by describing some of the challenges experienced by our customers operating fleets of small commercial marine vessels of different types. And of course, one of the main topics and areas of interest for all vessel operators is reducing fuel costs. Now, in order to reduce fuel, you first have to understand how much fuel you're consuming. You have to be able to monitor fuel consumption accurately. And it's helpful for them to know not just how much fuel they're consuming, but what activities the vessel is doing whilst consuming that fuel. Limiting vessel speed when the vessel is on passage is obviously a key aspect to reducing fuel and is a strategy that customers would like to use. And they're also interested to save fuel where they can when the vessel is loitering or tied alongside in harbour running the engines. And monitoring hull cleanliness and its effect on fuel consumption and fuel efficiency is also something that customers are interested in. The theme of preventative maintenance is something where customers want to be able to harness data, in particular big data, to detect machinery problems early. They want to avoid expensive failures. They want to catch problems at an early stage before they manifest as breakdowns, where the vessel potentially has to be taken out of service, losing charter days and charter revenue. And of course, they also want to reduce the costs associated with replacing expensive parts, or in some cases, whole engines, as a result of not resolving a problem early enough. Winning and keeping contracts is something which, in particular, our offshore wind customers are interested in. And they want to be able to evidence the performance of their vessels and their crew to potential customers, to charterers, in order to win contracts and in order to keep contracts through building an open relationship with their customers, whereby they can share performance information that's gathered from a measurement-based system. Crew and passenger safety is, of course, on every vessel operator's mind. Passenger vessels want to measure and to improve the ride comfort of their vessels for passengers in terms of reducing susceptibility to motion sickness. And pilot boat and CTV operators want to ensure the safety of their pilots and technicians when they transfer from a moving vessel onto another vessel or onto a fixed offshore structure. There is an increasing amount of legislation coming online, particularly with regard to environmental legislation, which vessel operators are increasingly mindful of. And in particular, they want to be able to evidence and report against their ESG credentials in terms of fuel consumption and emissions. And particularly in the US, tugboat operators now need to provide evidence or keep records of particular vessel operational data, and they need software tools to help them do this. Reporting is a theme which is, if you like, an increasing burden to vessel operators, both internal reporting within their business and reporting externally to their customers. Reporting is potentially a very effective way to improve situational awareness for the shore teams running a fleet of vessels, but it also carries a heavy burden. And they're increasingly looking for reporting solutions that are more timely, that are more accurate, and where possible, are more automated. Finally, vessel operators want to understand the operational efficiency of their vessels in terms of the vessel workability and capability in different weather conditions. And this is particularly true in the offshore wind industry. So how does BareFLEET help customers with these challenges? Well, I'm just going to kind of run through what the main features of the BareFLEET system are, and you'll hopefully see how they address some of the challenges that I've just described. Initially, BareFLEET is a vessel tracking system, so it will remotely track the position, the speed, heading course of a fleet of vessels, and it will also provide the capability to detect the activities that vessels are doing at any time based on their geofence position, their speed, the running condition of the engine, the motion of the vessel, etc. So it's a tool for activity and position tracking. BareFLEET has the capability to monitor VMMS motion. So that's the monitoring of ride comfort or motion sickness, monitoring impacts with other vessels or with offshore structures, monitoring the stability of the deck pitch, roll, and heave motion during transfer of crew or passengers on and off the vessel to other structures, and also monitoring whole body vibration in the cabin for the crew. Engine machinery health monitoring is a big part of what BareFLEET does. So BareFLEET monitors engine hours, it monitors alarms, and also longer term health trends based on measurements of coolant temperatures, oil pressures, and so on. And the system provides live email alerts to customers on shore, as well as longer term trending information via daily reports and web portal, which I'll come on to later. The engine monitoring works for all engine types. So BareFLEET is engine agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you're running Caterpillars or MTUs or Cummins or whatever engines. The system is adapted to monitor the performance of different types of engines, whether those are old or new engines. BareFLEET can measure and report on fuel efficiency, by which I mean not just the sort of litres per day consumption or even litres per hour, but the litres per nautical mile efficiency that the vessel achieves during longer passages. And it can also monitor emissions, that's CO2 equivalent emissions, but also other harmful emissions such as nitrogen oxide or sulfur dioxide, NOx and SOx emissions, which are also required to be reported for some commercial vessels. Importantly, BareFLEET doesn't just report some of this data remotely to the shore, it also provides the crew with a live onboard feedback on things like litres per nautical mile fuel efficiency. And you can set the crew targets which are appropriate for the particular vessel in order to drive behavioral change and reduce vessel and fleet fuel consumption. Reygar's digital logbook is an app for the crew to manually record activities, such as bunkering of fuel, such as transfer of personnel, which crew are on board at any particular time, weather observations, HSE incidents, etc. And this runs on a tablet, which is mounted in the wheelhouse within easy reach of the skipper or crew. As well as gathering all this data and relaying it to shore, BareFLEET provides several rich and varied data visualizations which allow customers to see this data and understand this data. And they include a live web portal for seeing real-time vessel location and readings, an automated daily reporting service that provides daily reports which are a summary of the last 24 hours vessel activity, and also the Fleet Vision portal, which allows customers to compare the performance of vessels across their fleet over long periods of time and identify performance trends. BareFLEET allows customers to share the data that's gathered by the system, both via its own API, where customers can import data into other data analytics tools. And we also offer specific integrations to some third-party bits of software which are commonly used by small commercial marine fleet operators, including the Helm Connect system, the MARAD maintenance system, and the CrewSmart system. So how does BareFLEET work? At the heart of the system is a telematics data logger, which we install on every vessel. And that data logger is connected to existing systems on the boat, as well as to some of our own sensors that we provide as part of the BareFLEET system. So it reads reads data rather from propulsion engines, from gensets, from the ship GPS, from a motion sensor that we install if required by the customer, and also from other systems like gearboxes or hybrid drives or winches or AST thrusters. We do tank level monitoring, fuel tank levels, and we also do machinery vibration monitoring. So the scope and the breadth of what BareFLEET can measure can be very broad, but in some cases it can also be very simple and restricted just to engine and position navigation monitoring. An on-vessel fuel app provides a real-time indication or feedback on all of the readings that the data logger gets to the crew. So they can see anything that the BareFLEET system can read, they can visualize in the wheelhouse in real time. All of the measurements coming into the data logger are also logged and relayed to the cloud, and they're logged measurements typically every 1 to 5 seconds, and they're uploaded to the cloud in sort of batches of data, refreshed every 4 to 5 minutes to the cloud. Data is accessible, or I should say that the relay of data over the internet by default happens over GSM, and the data logger has a built-in GSM modem to make this possible. But the data logger can also be connected to the ship's own SATCOM system. And of course, this is relevant where vessels are operating offshore for some or all of the time, and require that data is relayed regularly back to shore. So when it's out of GSM range, the system will make use of the vessel's own VSAT connection. BareFLEET doesn't require a permanent internet connection in order to function. It can buffer the data, and it can upload data to the cloud as and when the internet becomes available. But obviously, for vessels operating offshore for long periods of time, a SATCOM connection is essentially needed. Once the data arrives in the cloud, it's accessible via a number of means. I've mentioned the web portal and the daily reporting. And that's where email alerts are also generated based on data that's arrived at the cloud. And the API and third-party software integrations provide access to that cloud data. So what do our customers have to say about BareFLEET? Well, I've got 3 kind of example customer use cases here that describe some of the different reasons why customers get benefit from BareFLEET. The Port of London Authority is a harbour authority operating 25 small workboats on the Thames in London. Their fleet manager, a gentleman called Andy Osborne, was looking for a system that provided a very simple eye-in-the-sky picture of where all his vessels were, what they were doing, where they had been, and what they'd been doing over the past 24 hours, in order that he could simply keep track of who was where and which vessels were doing what. And he also wanted early warning of maintenance issues that would potentially cause a vessel to be taken out of service for maintenance, or indeed cause an expensive repair. And he wanted early warning of those issues as early as possible so that he could plan and reschedule the jobs which the fleet have to do and spread that over different vessels, and take a particular vessel out of service early in order to fix a problem which would save cost and overall increase the availability of the whole fleet over time. He uses BareFLEET Daily, well, I should say, and his team primarily use the BareFLEET Daily reports to give them this information about vessel activity and maintenance issues. And they also make use of the live email alerts where critical alarms and engine issues arise. Crowley is our next example, and Crowley are a well-known operator of tugboats and larger bulk carrier vessels in the US. They use BareFLEET on 12 harbour tugs and offshore tugs in their fleet. And their primary aim has been to reduce overall fuel consumption and improve their ESG performance. And they've specifically wanted to be able to report the fuel consumption and emissions and trip distance for each vessel, for each tugboat, every time it mobilized and demobilized to and from a job, in order that they could understand what the fuel consumption and emissions was for those activities and drive reductions. And they've used the feedback from the data provided by BareFLEET, which integrates, I should say, with the Helm Connect system, which Crowley also use to manage their tugboat operations. they've used that data to drive significant reductions, in some cases more than 30% reductions in fuel consumption for vessel mobilization and demobilizations as a result of understanding what the differences in fuel efficiency are from steaming at different speeds. The integration with Helm is a system that they use as a sort of front end for their shore teams as well as for their vessel crews. And the integration with BareFLEET has meant that they can continue to use the front end interface with which they're familiar, whilst getting the benefit of the back end accurate measurements of fuel and emissions that come from BareFLEET. And Crowley are also an example of, if you like, a power user of BareFLEET data, whereby they use our API to access the raw measurements that are gathered. Those are measurements of winch tension or engine load or vessel speed or pitch and roll motion or whatever it might be, to do their own analysis, which helps them understand performance trends as well as to identify maintenance issues using their own analytics tools. Final example is Purus HST. They are an operator of 20 crew transfer vessels in the European offshore wind market. They use BareFLEET because they wanted to provide customers, their charter customers, who are the offshore wind farm operators, with evidence of vessel and even crew performance in order to win and maintain contracts. Now, they share BareFLEET's daily reports with their customers, and indeed not just daily reports, weekly reports and monthly reports with their wind farm customers every day as part of a sort of campaign to be open about the performance and activity of all their vessels, to build trust with their customer. And that's been a very, very successful strategy for them. And they've grown their presence in the offshore wind market from 3 vessels a few years ago. Over the past 4 or 5 years, they've now grown to a fleet of 20 crew transfer vessels. And this strategy of openly sharing performance data based on impartially gathered measurements has been a part of their success. Okay, so I'm now going to show you some of the sort of the features of the BareFLEET system in terms of the I've mentioned the daily reporting and the web portal and the Fleet Vision system, and I'm just going to show you those in action and give you a feeling for the tools that the customer can use to gain access to BareFLEET data. I just mentioned at this point, if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A to fire them in as we go, and we will come to those and try and answer all of those at the end of the presentation. Also, just to explain, since the acquisition of Reygar by AST Networks to form AST Reygar, there's some exciting development work ongoing to bring together the best features of IRAMS and BareFLEET and improve in some areas the sort of look and feel of some aspects of the BareFLEET tool set. And those improvements will be coming online in the coming months, and you'll see changes to some of the interfaces that I'm demonstrating here. So I'm going to start with a daily report, and this is something which is emailed out to customers every day, appears in their inbox. You can download it from the web portal, and it's a 24-hour summary of everything that the particular vessel has done in the last 24 hours. This is a crew boat operating in Malaysia, and we can see there's an interactive map here provided within the daily report showing the track of the vessel and any notable activities, in this case, a crew transfer onto a offshore platform that the vessel's done. You can see the track, direction, and speed, which is color-coded, and you hover over the track, and you can see the speed at any point. And on the left-hand side is a summary for the 24-hour period that's being considered of things like trip distance, fuel consumption, CO2 equivalent emissions, engine startup and shutdown time, and so on. As we scroll down the report, you'll see the engine hours and the fuel consumption is presented, and these are presented for each engine. And in the case of the fuel consumption breakdown, it's broken down according to vessel activity. So in this case, when the vessel's at rest, when the vessel's in the safety zone, when it's doing transfers onto platforms, transfers of crew, and when it's in transit, where of course most of the fuel is consumed. The alarms and engine trends are included in the daily report. So the alarms would normally be critical engine or machinery alarms. The trends would be measurements of pressure and temperature according to reference expected values for the particular machinery. And where there's something that's out of the ordinary, that's highlighted in orange or in red. And a little 7-day trend graph is provided for each of those abnormal measured trends so that the customer can see, is this something that's just occurred in the last 24 hours, or is this something that's been trending at a high temperature or a low pressure for, let's say, the last 7 days? And that might influence the course of action that they take. The vessel log provides a summary of all of the vessel activities that have taken place in the last 24 hours. In this case, this is transfer of technicians onto a platform, and gives the fuel efficiency and the fuel consumption for each activity, and of course the activity timing. All of the measurements of whether it's vessel speed or engine load or vessel motion are presented in a summary activity graph, and the background color to that graph shows the type of activity that the vessel was doing at a particular time. So in this case, background blue color is when the vessel is maneuvering around, and the background green color is when the vessel is at rest. For this particular customer, they are interested in monitoring fuel tank levels in order to identify both bunkering events and also potentially fuel theft events. And so they can see how the fuel tank levels vary over time in correlation with the measurements of fuel consumption on the individual engines. And from this, they can verify that the fuel that's being consumed by the engines tallies with what's being indicated from the tanks. And they can also verify as you say, the bunkering of fuel. So hopefully you see the daily report is a succinct way of summarizing vessel activity and the measurement parameters and KPIs that are likely to be of interest to a customer on a day-to-day basis. And these reports can be customized to include or exclude particular bits of information depending on the intended audience that's seeing this report. Next, I'm going to show you the live web portal. So here we have a fleet of 4 tugboat vessels operating in the US, and customers can log on to the portal and see the location and activity of those vessels in real time via this portal. So this particular vessel is currently offline, but at its last reported data, it was doing 12 knots, engine speed of 850 RPM. On the right-hand side, we can see all of the active alarms for all of the vessels in the fleet. And we can select a particular vessel and drill down into the next level of detail. And that's what we're doing here. So we can see here we can see the last 24-hour track for this particular vessel, which is based at Long Beach. And on the right-hand side there, we see the active alarms that are pertinent just to that vessel. And below that, we can see the activities that the vessel has conducted in the last 24-hour period. And in this particular case, the system BareFLEET is integrated with Helm Connect, and so those activities come from the Helm system. So you can see their arrivals, mobilizations, and demobilizations as recorded within Helm Connect being shown in the BareFLEET system. So if we want to dive into further detail, we might want to look at some of the actual measurements coming back from the BareFLEET system for a particular period of time. And here we can see measurements for engine speed, vessel speed over ground, engine fuel rate, engine speed, engine load, even winch tension and winch line scope, which are monitored on this particular tugboat. And we can see how those vary over a period of time. And beneath the measurement graphs, you can see those little blue diamonds indicate activities that are logged by the crew within the digital logbook system that they're using, which in this case is the Helm Connect system. So they can see the timing of those recorded activities with respect to the measurements that are coming back from the sensors. Now, sometimes a customer may want to drill down into, oh, beg your pardon. So customers have an interest to sometimes see a live dashboard, which is basically like being on the bridge of the vessel and seeing the live readings of speed over ground or engine speed or temperature or pressure or engine alarms. And the remote live dashboard allows customers to see that, and that updates every few minutes, or you can put it in a live mode and it will in fact update every few seconds, kind of like being on the bridge of the vessel. Sometimes customer will have a requirement to drill right down into detail of select customized measurements for any period of time. And the BareFLEET system allows them to do that going back up to the last 6 months worth of data. And they can drill right down into the detailed second by second or 5 second by 5 second measurements. And they can select any measurement parameters that BareFLEET is gathering, and they can zoom in on those measurements. Perhaps there's a point in time where there was a machinery failure. Perhaps there was an impact with another vessel or an offshore structure or some other incident, and the customer wants to zoom into the detailed measurements and understand exactly what happened. And the live web portal allows them to do that. There's a big selection of measurements that the customer can choose from. And of course, depending on the scope of monitoring for a particular BareFLEET installation on this particular vessel, they're monitoring ASI thrusters and engines and gensets and winches, as well as ship position and weather information. So the scope of monitoring can be quite extensive, and there are simple tools here to find the parameters that you're interested in and select those for display within the Data Explorer. So this detailed view of per vessel measurements is one use for BareFLEET, but often customers want to look at the big picture. And they want to be able to compare the performance of vessels in their fleet over long periods of time. They're not interested in the minutiae details of sort of second by second measurements. They're interested in comparing fuel consumption or motion sickness performance or crew transfer score for CTV vessels between their fleet over long periods of time. And the Fleet Vision tool, which is what I'm showing you here, allows them to do that. Fleet Vision presents fleet data for any selected period of time for any subset of vessels in a fleet. So here we have a customer operating 12 or so crew transfer vessels. On the map, we can see the individual passages that all of their vessels are doing between the harbour and the worksite over the selected period of the last 8 days. The fuel efficiency in litres per nautical mile for all of those vessels is shown down there in the bottom left. You can see a direct comparison between vessel efficiency. And the cumulative fuel consumption for all of those vessels is shown down there on the bottom right. So here is a simple tool to look at fleet performance data. And you can filter that data by activity. So you might just be interested in transits, or you might be interested in periods of time when the vessel is at rest. And you can filter those activities in Fleet Vision. We're looking at the vessel log page here. And this is a log of every single activity that all of the vessels in a customer's fleet have undertaken over the chosen period of time. And we can see information such as the fuel consumed per activity, the fuel economy per activity, the trip distance, the CO2 emissions, the NOx emissions, the motion sickness measurements on a per activity basis. And they can be filtered. So we might be interested in activities where the distance traveled was more than 20 nautical miles. We might then be interested in of those activities. We might then be interested in those activities where the fuel economy that was achieved was, let's say, greater than 25 liters per nautical mile. And the log page allows a customer to filter activities in that way, and they can then be exported so that they can present them in a report or do further analysis on them. Customers are interested in leaderboards as a way to compare the performance of the vessels as well as their crew. And this is looking at fuel economy comparison for all of the masters and skippers that work for a particular fleet operator, as well as the fuel economy for the vessels which they skip. And that's over the chosen period of time, which happens to be the last week. You can select at any period of time you can select several years if you want to. And you can also filter those fuel economy readings by vessel activity. Maybe you're interested in just transits. Maybe you're interested when the vessel was working at low speed. And you can do that sort of filtering using the Fleet Vision tool. This is a great way to understand how different vessels in your fleet are performing, and even make decisions about future procurement choices for specifying new vessels when you have a really good understanding of how your current fleet operate, what their duty cycle looks like. So customers are also interested in tracking emissions, and they can track the CO2 and NOx and SOx emissions of their fleet over long periods of time, and again make similar comparisons between vessels over a period of time. And there's a nice visualization that just provides a dashboard summary of consumption and emissions for the total fleet, or indeed a total for a subset of the fleet over a chosen period of time, which you can see here. And the graphs below show how those emissions and consumption measurements trend over time. So you can look at weekly trends or monthly trends or even quarterly or annual trends across vessels in your fleet. Fuel economy is, of course, something that's of interest to a lot of vessel operators. And there are tools within Fleet Vision that allow you to visualize how the fuel efficiency, which I mean a measurement of the liters consumed per nautical mile traveled over the ground, how that varies with boat speed and how that compares between different vessels in your fleet. It's what we call the fuel speed curve, which is what I'm showing on the top left-hand side here. And by combining that information with information about the hourly running costs of a vessel and the cost of fuel, dollars per hour, dollars per liter or dollars per gallon rather, it's possible to visualize how the running cost of a vessel changes when you combine the hourly running cost and the fuel cost, depending on the speed that you choose to steam on passage. And this helps customers make operational decisions about efficient speeds to transit on long passages that weigh up the cost of fuel with the running cost of the vessel. And we can see the blue line here in this particular example for the particular vessel being considered here, HST Ewan. So based on the measurement data of fuel efficiency performance for this vessel, this is telling you that there is an optimum speed of about 8 knots for the parameters that we've chosen, which leads to the lowest overall running cost for that boat. There are customers who use Fleet Vision not just to compare the fuel and the emissions performance of their vessels, but also to look at the ride comfort and the transfer stability, by which I mean motion stability of their vessel, and compare those parameters across their fleet. This is particularly of interest for pilot vessel operators and for offshore wind crew transfer vessel operators, where motion sickness measurements and deck heave motion stability measurements are an important metric in determining how good a job they're doing delivering technicians or passengers on and off turbines or other vessels. And so these sorts of visualizations, for example, the motion sickness measurement for all of the transits across a fleet, shown in the bottom right here, are a way of comparing which vessels are performing better than other vessels. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a picture of what the BareFLEET toolset looks like for as a customer. And I just wanted to finish really by summarizing what some of the main benefits of the BareFLEET system are for customers. It's a great tool to provide an eye in the sky on all aspects of vessel and fleet operations, both where vessels are, how fast they're going, what activities they've been doing. For the shore team, it gives them a very, very clear visualization of that information, both in real time and also historically. As a tool to drive fuel reductions, BareFLEET has some great functionality, both for measuring fuel consumption and telling you where you're at right now, but also driving fuel reduction efficiencies, in particular through use of the on-vessel fuel app, which provides live indication of fuel efficiency to crews and sets them targets which are achievable for the particular vessel that they're operating. Environmental and ESG reporting is a great feature of BareFLEET, where customers are interested to evidence their ESG credentials, to monitor CO2 equivalent and NOx and SOx emissions, and to drive down those emissions. BareFLEET provides them with the data and the wherewithal to achieve those emission reductions through their operational decision making. Predictive maintenance is possible through BareFLEET by identifying health trends and identifying abnormal engine and machinery running conditions, whether that's measurements of temperature or pressure, whether it's measurements of engine alarms and warnings, or indeed machinery vibration. And that information is communicated to shore teams through various means, including the live email alerts and the daily performance reports and engine trend information that I showed you earlier. The integration between BareFLEET and third-party software systems and the availability of our API means that the data that's gathered by BareFLEET can be brought together with other sources of data, which might include financial, commercial, weather data, so that customers can do their own analysis and use the data in a way that suits them. And that's a real advantage of BareFLEET. Safety, of course, is always a concern for vessel operators, and in particular, the motion monitoring that BareFLEET offers in terms of seasickness monitoring, in terms of personnel crew transfer monitoring, and the monitoring of impact forces and crew whole body vibration are important aspects of improving safety for crew and passengers on board commercial vessels. And finally, the ability of BareFLEET to present reports which can be used internally as well as shared externally with customers, which summarize vessel activity and vessel information in a timely way. They're accurate, and in many cases, or in all cases, really, they are automated. That provides an opportunity for customers to significantly reduce their reporting burden. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I hope I've been able to explain to you at least the basics of what BareFLEET's all about. I'd be really pleased to take any questions if you have them. Perhaps it's a good time to introduce Dan, the General Manager at AST Reygar. Dan, maybe you'd like to say a couple of words.
Yeah, firstly, good afternoon, good morning to everyone who's on the call, and thank you to Chris for the presentation, very informative. There have been a couple of questions that have been asked. One is from Vince, which is just asking for a typical sort of price range on the solution. We've done a lot of work on this, and I'm happy to answer this. The system itself is broken down into components, so modules that you can buy optional depending on the needs of the customers. Typically, the hardware for the base IoT system, typically somewhere in the region of around $4,000 to $5,000. And then if you want the motion monitoring element, the digital logbook, which Chris has referenced, they just become additional modules that you can bolt on per vessel depending on the scenario it works for. And typically monthly, the subscription ranges from somewhere between $150 per month up to sort of $200 per month, depending on the amount of bolt-on products that you take with the base system. So typically somewhere between 4 to 5,000, and then the bolt-on modules that run with it. So hopefully that answers that question. We can send around price lists after this, which will give you a bit more of a granular look into the options that are available. There's another question that's been asked around, is white labeling of this service still available? It will be available in later phases as the integration is being worked on currently between the AST development team and the Rayguard development team. We're focusing on getting all the key and core functionality into the platform, which should hopefully be live this calendar year with some exciting additional extras as well. And then at the start of next year, we know that we have a lot of partners that exist within the AST ecosystem. And the plan was always to have the ability to white label the service. So we could put the customer logo, the customer branding on the platform. And this would be something that they could push out to their customer base, and we would support them from behind the scenes. And that absolutely is still something that we plan to make available, and that will be worked on in the new year. So hopefully that answers that question as well. There was a question that I just wanted to pose Chris as well, if I can, and that was around how does the relationship work with existing SATCOM systems that exist on board the vessel as well?
Sure. Yeah. So BareFLEET is designed to make use of existing internet connectivity that's on the boat where that's available. So although it does have its own built-in GSM modem, that's only really useful for vessels operating near shore. So where a customer is operating offshore and has their own SATCOM solution, BareFLEET is designed to physically plug into that SATCOM system and use that SATCOMs as a means to send data back to shore.
Okay, and that's agnostic to any kind of bearer or carrier from the SATCOM side?
Yeah, absolutely. It just needs a TCP/IP connection.
Okay. And just as a partnering question to that, typically per vessel, what's the type of data range usage per month that we're sending back over Cellular and Satcom?
Sure. So BareFLEET is gathering a lot of information. If you imagine it's taking typically 50 to 100 parameter measurements every 1 to 5 seconds. So it's providing customers with a lot of granular, detailed, relatively high frequency information. Typically, a gigabyte per month would be a typical amount of the data usage in terms of data that's sent from the data logger to the shore. And then, of course, there's a bit of data going the other way where we might do remote firmware updates or configuration changes where we send information back from shore to the data logger. That's much less.
Sure. Okay. There's been another question, which is, can the system automatically go from cellular to satellite service, or does it have to be selected?
Great question. It switches automatically. So you can configure the data logger to prioritize one or the other communication channel, whereby, for example, typically you would use GSM where it's available because it's cheaper, and then you would switch to SATCOM only when you needed to, when you were out of GSM range. That would be the most common configuration. In theory, you could do it the other way around.
Sure. Okay. Well, hopefully that answers that question. There's another question, which is, what is the relationship that Raygar has with Helm? Are there any restrictions that might limit selling Raygar in the Americas?
Yes, so I mean, ours is a very much a cooperative relationship with Helm. We're not tied to selling Helm with BareFLEET, just like Helm aren't tied to selling their product with BareFLEET. Particularly in the Americas, there are a lot of Helm customers, particularly tugboat users, using that system. It's a great system for a general fleet management tool, and we have a really good relationship with the guys at Helm and have worked very hard on integrating the BareFLEET platform with the Helm system. But there's no, commitment. It's just an opportunity that suits some customers.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Chris. And hopefully that answers that question. Um, there isn't any more questions that have been asked. If people want to follow up and have a further presentation, a further demonstration, please feel free to reach out to us. Also, if you are one of the resellers that already trades with AST, please feel reach out to your existing account manager, and we're more than happy to spend extra time going through some of the more granularities of the system. We're happy to help. And over the coming weeks and months, we'll be doing other follow-up sessions as we start to release new products and new features within the platform itself when it's live. So we will be doing follow-ups on this. And again, if anyone has any further questions, please just do engage with us. There are contact details at the end of the presentation, and you can also go onto the website and contact your account manager as and when necessary as well. So if there are no further questions, which there doesn't appear to be, I think we can leave it there. And firstly, or finally, thank you very much to everyone for attending. Hopefully you all found the presentation useful and informative. Thank you again for Chris for leading it and presenting the information. And we hopefully look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. So thanks again for everyone taking the time to listen to us today. Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.